This week, Glitter Girl looked out and caught a commonality. Scrapbookers staying behind the camera and rarely stepping out in front. Even when making an effort to capture the everyday of life, including those self-portraits can be quite the challenge. Glitter Girl, can you help take the stress out of scrapping selfies?
Of course I can. Today I wanted to focus on scrapbooking some self-portraits that are not fancy in any way. Very, very simple shots taken just at home in the hallway where the full-length mirror is in our flat, and just trying to embrace that idea of still being able to make a meaningful layout even if the photos are not perfect. My hair is maybe out of place and maybe I didn't look particularly amazing, but wanting to document something over time. So I've done this with a series of photos that show my ever-expanding waistline, but this same idea goes for all sorts of different ways that you could show how somebody changes over time. And that might be the different ways that you style your hair or you do your makeup. It might be if you're on a fitness journey and you're really working toward a certain goal. It might be if you're looking at something else, it might be how someone has grown up over the years, like if you're scrapbooking your children. But I really do want to emphasize that idea that you could apply these ideas to photos of yourself, and they don't need to be photos that anybody else sees you take, so you can take 1,000,000 shots and delete all but your favorite. You can do this with very little in terms of equipment. These shots are all taken in my hallway, which has a mirror, but it doesn't have much space behind the mirror. So you know how it goes if you're trying to use a proper camera in an enclosed space. It often doesn't work because you need to have just the right lens combination to get the lens out wide enough to get the shot, even though you're in a tiny space, without distorting everything. So the only answer in practicality for that tiny little hallway mirror is my phone. I don't have a fancy brand new phone. My phone's a few years old, but it will still take a photo in the mirror. So that's all I needed. And then I've taken all of these pictures and turned them to black and white. And I've turned them to black and white as a group, because individually they're all shot in color, but they've been shot at different times of the day. And so the lighting is different and the coloring comes off differently in every single shot. So together they look a real jumble in the coloring, because maybe one day I've got daylight and the colors are really true, and then another day I've taken it at night with just the normal light bulb on in the hallway and it comes out really yellow. But because I put them all into the same black and white, then they look a lot better together. Black and white is also really forgiving if you haven't done your makeup or anything like that, and you're not feeling particularly confident. And you'll notice if you look that some days I'm a bit more serious posing in the mirror. Some days I make silly faces because that's just the kind of mood I'm in. And I didn't need to get them all shot exactly the same, so that's what I'm going to use. I have one big color photo that was one taken at a different way. So I'm going to take that one out and use that on the 12 by 12 standard page. And then I'm going to use these 9 photos in a pocket page. So this is from the album I'm working on that has always one 12 by 12 and one pocket page facing each other as double page spreads. And these photos I've taken to be able to have a record, but I liked the idea of putting a bunch of them together so that you can actually see the progress or the change, rather than having them only spread throughout the album. So in all honesty, these pictures will probably show up on other layouts as well as the whole album comes together. So it might be that, say there's a whole layout for the week that this photo was taken, I might have that particular photo again there. And maybe that's the great place to use it in color, where it wouldn't be next to all the other images. Okay, I've talked long enough. I'm going to start scrapping now. I'm going to actually put the page protector and the small photos aside and just work on the 12 by 12 to start. And the only thing I'm going to do to keep the 12 by 12 in mind, keep the divided page protector in mind, is that once I've found the place where this larger photo is going to go, and it's a 6 by 8 print, I'm going to cut out some of the back of this paper that won't show so that I can have one 3x4 card in this pattern paper to match exactly on that facing page. Other than that, I'm going to do the whole 12x12 and then the whole pocket page. So here's that box that I've cut out, and I just made sure it was bigger than 3x4, so I'll come back to that when I have the facing page. And now this photo is going to go over the top of that. So to strengthen this up, I'll just make sure I've got some adhesive around those edges there. And if your pattern paper or cardstock, if you're ever cutting through a background like that and it's a bit too thin, the paper weight isn't super heavy, then you can always just back it with a scrap of something else because it's not going to show. But for the moment, I'll see how this goes. If it feels too flimsy in the end, I can just put another piece of paper over the top of that. Not to worry. Okay, I have a wood veneer card that's going to be my largest embellishment here, and I'll go ahead and stick that down so that I know exactly where I'm going. This is exclusive to 2Ps, but to match the new Amy Tangerine +1 collection. So it has that hand-drawn camera. And now I'm going to work on all the embellishment, the title, and the journaling that will go on this particular page to lead in to the facing page, so that this one introduces the story and then the smaller photos help tell that story piece by piece. And what I wanted to pick up on the mood board this week were the touches of red that are in the mood board. So I've already started with the black and white that comes from the chalkboard embellishments and different touches that are on the mood board, but I wanted to bring in little bits of red. So I have some red October Afternoon letter stickers and some red in the Dear Lizzie Daydreamer sticker book, and some red from the Crepe Paper Love Notes chipboard set. In looking through my embellishments and different papers and things like that that will coordinate and bring out those pops of red, I found a few different cards in the Flea Market mini kit Project Life set. So they have these lovely black and cream to match this background paper, but some of the different color elements are not really what I was after. Like there's more pink than there is red and things like that. But what I'm going to do is just change it up with some tape and other embellishments. So for example, I didn't really want to go with yellow here. So I'm going to cover that yellow with some red washi tape. Pretty sure this is an older My Mind's Eye tape. Just trying to get it lined up there so that it's nice and straight. And now, instantly, I don't have the pink, or the yellow, I have the red, and that little bit of pink I don't have to worry about because it's going to go underneath the wood veneer. And I use these little lines here to line it up with the photo and stick everything back down. And I also went through the Dear Lizzie sticker book and went ahead and tore out the different stickers that had the red on them. And this is enough for me to use over both this page and the facing page on the double page spread. And thought I would go ahead and start adding in some chipboard here as well. So I thought that black and white striped background makes for a nice contrast with something like the red lettering. And here where I have the wood veneer, which is thicker than paper but not as thick as chipboard, having those three there together gives me that nice bit of dimension so that you can see the differences when you're looking at it in person. And my journaling can go here, even though it does mean that I'm going to be writing on the horizontal rather than the vertical. I'm going to use the red line as my guide and do 2 lines of text in between every red line. Since this wood veneer card matches the Amy Tangerine stamps, I have that same design in the little stamp, and just before I start my journaling, I'm going to stamp that into the journaling space. Easier to do it this way around because then I can just write my writing so that it fits around the edge. And I'm just looking to see if I want my my more faded ink or the brighter black, and I'm going to go with the brighter of the two. And then add my journaling right along there. This part of the journaling explains that these pictures are not from a fancy photo shoot. They're not amazing or perfect in any way, but that they were just a really simple way for me to keep track and see just how much and how quickly things can change. And that leads me into a space to start adding a little bit more embellishment here. And then I'm also going to add a title on this page. I think my next step is to deal with this little gap in the space here. And I thought maybe that would be a good spot for one of those stickers that I'd started with. And I can just tuck it behind that wood veneer card. Oh. Or I can trim it down and make it a little bit smaller first so that it will fit. Let's see if this is a bit better once I just cut a little bit of the open space off the top. I think this is going to need to come down a little bit too, so let's see what I can do. I'd originally pulled this set of puffy heart stickers out because it has some red hearts that I figured would be useful somewhere along the line, but since there's so much blue in this photo, it seems like a nice color to use for the accent, and there are some blue hearts as well. So that will fill my need of some sort of contrasting element. I didn't want to use a white thicker alphabet up here or a black and white because I have the cream in both the background and the journaling card here. So I went with a larger sparkly and black thicker font so that that word would still be legible even though it's on a black background. So I needed something that would change up the texture enough so that you could see those letters on the background, and then the red over here. And I want to bring this color down to the other corner of the page here, and you can start to see how this is becoming a square that's a little bit patchworked with pieces. I went ahead and added a little bit of blue washi tape here for a couple reasons. One, because this photo was slightly higher than the journaling card, so I had a little gap here where my title went over the edge. So this helps give that a nice line all the way across. And then also because now I have a triangle of blue. So there's all this blue in my sweater, but also the blue in this little heart and the blue here gives it that nice little frame, a little triangle within this big square. And it's probably enough blue that if I don't want to pull it onto the facing page, I don't really need to. But I do want to bring this color down here, so I'm going to use the other alphabet with a piece of chipboard. What I thought is that this little piece from the crepe paper chipboard set could work really well at the bottom of the camera here. And it gives me a little space underneath that can frame the date. And I just wanted to put the years in that are covered by the photos. So this way I will have the same color as the letter stickers up there at the top, and that's one way that makes working with shades of different colors a little bit easier. If all the shades of your color don't exactly match because they're from different collections, you can just have different things across the page from each other that will then bring in those different shades, and by the time you're all done, it'll all work out okay. Instead of an enamel heart, I went with a tiny little wood veneer heart since I had that bit of wood veneer right above. That seems to be the right size and everything else to make that work. Now, I mentioned just a bit ago about this becoming a square that's patchworked together with all different pieces. The exception to that is this corner right here. And what I'm going to do is leave it just for now. I'm going to go ahead and do the pocket page, and then I want to use whatever bits that I end up using on the pocket page. I want to come back to this, and maybe that will mean that I use part of a 3x4 card or something that will just fit in this little corner here to finish off the square and help this page match with the facing page. So it could actually stand like this. I don't dislike it with the corner open. It's okay. But I think that will help pull the two together really well. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my photos and get started on the facing page that's made of 4x6 and 3x4 pockets. I printed all 9 photos on one sheet of photo paper, and it started with them at about 2.8 inches across, so that I knew they would be smaller than a 3x4 card. And then before I printed it, I shrunk it down just a little bit more to make sure that I could also keep a little bit of a white edge on each particular picture. So then I have just come up with a few different cards to create the background, since all of the photos are smaller than the pockets, and I've used the facing page as the inspiration for choosing what cards would go behind the pictures. So they're here in chronological order, and I've left one gap on each row, and the papers come in. I have the direct piece here, that's that one that I cut out behind the photo. So I have that pattern, and I want to make sure that that was one without a photo on top, so that the pattern will stay really obvious. Then I wanted to repeat some things like this diagonal, and I had that in both the 3x4 or the 4x6 cards in that flea market Project Life kit. So I tried both, and I preferred using 2 different 3x4 cards and leaving the 4x6 out, because I thought all 3 together was a bit too heavy. So instead went with, I'll use 2 red cards as a background on these 2 corners, and then 2 that are cream on these corners. So there's a mix here of that flea market kit. Everything across the middle is from the flea market kit, but then this one is a Valentine themed or love themed mini kit, and this one is from one of the larger core kits. Now this one is not an exact match to the color, because here it's white and there's a bit of pink on this, but what I wanted was a card that was red all the way around the edges, and then I'm going to deal with the other colors as I get there. Then I'm just taking one last look at this one, and then I'm going to set it aside while I work on this, and that was that I wanted to repeat the largest embellishment here in something that would be a smaller format. So here I have the camera, and here the film strip, and both on wood veneer. And from there, I'm going to just put this one aside and work on this one piece by piece, adding a little bit to each of the cards as I go, and then see how it all comes together. And then before my process is completely done, I'll put them side by side to make any little final adjustments. First thing I find is that if I leave it too long before I attach the photos, when they're all in a series like this, I can very easily forget where I am and get them all mixed up. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the pictures. I'm just keeping the adhesive in the middle in case there's anything I want to tuck underneath those edges. It won't be too permanent that way. Now I've gone with all the cream accents rather than white accents in the paper, but then the photos are black and white. They're not black and cream. And that's why I wanted to keep the 2 separate, so that that little bit of white down there won't be there in the finished version, because I want the photos to have that higher contrast and for them to be the only thing there that is truly black and white. This way I can just make sure everything's in the right order, and then I can go card by card to finish it all up. I think this one I won't adhere since I know I want to do something about that side bit there, and that might mean that I'm straight away just going to take the photo off again. So I'll think ahead just a tiny bit. It's pretty rare for me, but I'll give it a go. And something else I wanted to go ahead and bring over was the red washi tape. So there's this bit of pink I don't really want on the finished version. So I think that's a good place to start with the washi. And maybe across this, obviously that's not going to go over the top of the photo, but just while I figure out how much I need, across this little banner that's printed on the card to highlight the red. I think for the last little bit of the tape, I'll tuck it underneath here and have it go off the edge, so that then I have it on a diagonal across the page of pockets. And that's plenty of that tape to show up across there. I know I want to label some of these with numbers, and there's some other little details here that I want to add to and make a nice little feature card out of this one. And these two give me my best shot for lettering. So I keep all that in mind as I figure out what can go on each one. To number everything, I just used all different simple, small letter stickers with numbers. And I've also added in a 2-piece flare badge that says January, just to mark one of them with a date. The rest I'm just going to leave with the weeks, except for the most current one, which I thought I would mark off as today. And I'm going to do that same thing with one of the Dear Lizzie stickers, cut it down to a narrower size so I can fit it in the space that's there. I think I'll take the little white bit off the edge as well so that it's just red text on a yellow background, and run this bit of text on the vertical, which was something I did with one of the embellishments on the other side as well. And then with this one, I decided to cover this with just a bit of a scrap of pattern paper that I've used in the last couple of videos. That's black chalkboard print with little white hearts. And I'm going to run that right to the edge of the red card and just trim off the other side. That's going to get rid of all of the white except for a tiny little bit down there at the bottom, and I'll just make sure that I include some embellishment to go over that. Now, I found which sticker I'm going to use here, but I'm going to put some other things with it, and for the moment I'm just going to go to each card and add a little something to dress it up. So I have different stickers and things where I've looked for the bit of red. I wanted to make sure I had something that would cover that little awkward label that's behind there, so that's all I need there. I have those red puffy hearts. When I'm working with really imperfect photos like these, then I also keep in mind that the small embellishments like these little hearts and different things that I add on top can cover up imperfections in the photos. So taking pictures in the hallway, I often get either the door handle or the power socket on the wall in the shot, and I can use tiny little embellishments to cover those. And so a lot of the numbers cover those things up, or the other little bits have added, and that just makes it a little bit easier to work with. The top the two corner cards give me a little bit more room to work with. So I have just a bit more space. So all of the small cards with the photos are done now. I've just added tiny little bits and pieces, flare badges, little word stickers, chipboard hearts. It's all just little pieces that I can stick on. I've done a little bit more with this one where I started with a die cut and a sticker and a badge, but repeated that same camera stamp that I used on the facing page. And this one just has a little bit more space, so a bit of a subtitle here and a little journaling down here in the corner. But all really, really simple, and that leads me to my feature card to finish it off, where I want to use this sticker, and then I thought it would be nice to have something behind that, between that and the black heart print, and I'm going to use this red and cream heart print, which is another 3x4 card, but I'm going to cut it down to just be a frame for this sticker. I'm going to attach the sticker with some pop dots so that it will be definitely, the red will definitely be in the background as a frame. And then just cut around it so that I have square edges instead of rounded corners, and a smaller box than the 3x4, of course. And that's going to go in the center of this card. And I think because pretty much all of the cards have a heart somewhere, and this one does in the pattern paper, but not in any sort of embellishment, I think tiny little hearts would be the best way to finish that. And just thinking, might be best to have just a tiny little bit of that blue from the other side repeat. So I'll add one little blue enamel heart up here at the top and see how that works out. I may need to fix these pop dots. I think I've spread them out too much and it's flattening out, but that's boring, so I'll save that for later. Okay, so I now have then my two pages that I just want to take a look at them together before I call them finished, because I know I have that one little gap over here where I wanted to have something that I could bring back from the pocket page and put it onto the 12x12. Well, I think the best pattern for me to repeat in that corner would be this little heart print with all the globes, and there's a 3x4 card in that kit that has that pattern. I don't need to lift that all up and put the whole card underneath there, so I'm just going to cut it down to a smaller piece so that I can keep this a bit to a minimum of how much I need to pick up. And I'll just offset these corners so that it's not perfectly lined up. So it's not an exact square, but that's what I liked about how this was coming together, that it was all a little different. And I think that's where I'm going to call it finished for today. So there's one 12x12 standard page, and then a facing page with the 4x6 and 3x4 cards that in my album will go together like that. And one last thing is that I tend to get the question, where would I put this in the album? Well, if I'm going to do a series of photos like this, I always go with the last photo, the most current one. So if I'm keeping it in chronological order, it'll go with today's date, and that's where I will keep it in my album. I think that way you can look back, but it's a bit like getting a spoiler warning. If I put it way back here at the beginning, then you're not going to have to read to the end of the book to get to see further along. So the idea that I put it with the last page because we can look back, but we can't see what's coming. Now, I hope that you will take on the challenge this week to scrapbook a self-portrait of yourself. A self-portrait of yourself. Could I be more repetitive? But there we go. Don't feel like you have to get that picture absolutely, absolutely perfect. It is perfectly fine to embrace whatever things are imperfect in the picture. Make it a little bit real life, and that's absolutely fine. I know all of these pictures are completely imperfect. I have funny faces where I'm trying to get a good face and it's not working. I have bits that are blurry. I have bits that are in the background and not looking particularly well. I have some poses that are better than others, and I don't think any of them are particularly amazing, but I'm glad that I have these photos in my album to document that bit of real life. If you want to take just a single photo, then maybe this page design will be a little bit more inspiration for you. I hope you enjoy this week's challenges, and happy scrapping. Thanks so much for watching.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopsinAbucket.com.